Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero and movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Porteous, and joining me today, he's not even supposed to be here today, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
I don't appreciate your ruse, ma'am.
And I thought it smelled like shoe polish in here, Bruce Leslie.
I am a prickly pear berserker.
This is a family show. You halt your stuff right now, young sir. Welcome back, everybody. This week we are talking about our Patreon supporter selection. That's what those people over there at patreon.com/HMP every single week. They get pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, and of course get to vote on what we watch. This week, here are the choices that we had. Ingrid Goes West, Adventures in Babysitting, True Romance, The Iron Giant, but won out by a little bit. It was a much tighter race than I had imagined, but Clerks is top on our list this week, and so that is what we
How much did Ingrid Go West ultimately get?
I would say last place.
But I mean, how many votes?
2.
Oh wow, 2. That's more than I thought.
It should have more. I'm telling you, that's a sleeper one that they may have. Listen, there's tons of opportunities coming down the road. We'll have more of those votes.
In the book of Bruce, I'm calling this one a win, though, because that is my favorite movie on the list of the movies I've seen. Like, I'm so happy to get to watch Clerks again.
So if you would like to be one of those Patreon supporters, head on over to patreon.com/HMP pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. And of course, we're also going to be doing this because Batman is coming up next week. Let's go ahead and just get that on the table right now. Who's excited? I'm excited. Get ready, everybody. And the best part about that is if you're a member over at the Patreon, you guys are going to be able to vote and tell us what the majority of you think the actual Robin rating for Batman is, plus give a little review yourself. So if you would like to share some of your opinions about the Batman coming up, do yourself a favor, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join up at any level, and we'll see you over there.
And let me say something right now, because you're going to see the Batman if you're listening to this show. You're going to listen to you're going to watch the Batman. See Kimmy, who Zoe Kravitz is the lead in that movie. After you see her as Catwoman in the Batman, and you like her, you'd be like, "Hey, I'm going to check out that movie Kimmy, which is on HBO Max." And it is a good little movie. I like that movie a lot.
And by the time you finish doing that, Adam will have a review for that over at the Film Find. Boom. It's like your life couldn't get much better.
Well,
yeah.
Shut up, Curse. All right. But again, go over to patreon.com/HMP. We really appreciate all of that kind of good stuff. And like I said, today's movie is Clerks. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the trailer.
Salsa shark. We're gonna need a bigger boat.
Throughout history, they have been a part of our American life. Men and women who have made it their mission to serve their fellow man. They've worked hard enough. Isn't it time they had their own movie? Clerks.
This job would be great if it wasn't for the customers.
I don't bother them and they don't bother me.
I could do without the people in the video store.
Do you have that one with that guy who was in that movie that was out last year? You should hear the barrage of stupid questions I get.
What do you mean there's no ice? You mean I gotta drink this coffee hot?
You'd feel a hell of a lot better if you just rip into the occasional customer.
You're a clerk, paid to do a job. You can't just do anything you want while you're working.
Hey, you open? No!
What kind of convenience store do you run here?
Miramax Films presents
You think anybody can see us down here?
Why? Do you want to have sex or something?
Can we?
Clerks. Just because they serve you doesn't mean they like you.
You hate people.
But I love gatherings. Isn't it ironic?
Featuring new music by Soul Asylum, Corrosion of Conformity, Bad Religion, The Jesus Listen, and music by Alice in Chains.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Clerks. You know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Oh, so many ways he could go. Bruce, what do you got?
Anybody who was into comics in the late 80s and early 90s will remember the speculation boom, which became a bubble which inevitably burst during that era. The birth of Image, the death of Superman, and proliferation of chromium covers were just a few signs of the times. But if If you had a decent collection of 80s and 90s comics, they did go up quite a bit in value. Now, Kevin Smith happened to have a sizable comic collection in the early 90s, and I say had because he sold his collection to help raise the $27,557 budget to fund Clerks. I tried to find more specifics about these comics, like what interesting issues were in the collection. Did he get close to book value? Did he hustle up and down the block selling singles, or did he take the easy way out and move his entire collection to one buyer? I couldn't find the answers to any of those questions, but I will say that 1993 is the year the comic book bubble finally burst. So was it Kevin Smith flooding the market with his lifelong comics collection that finally pushed things over the edge? Can we blame the speculation bust of the mid-90s from 1993 on Kevin Smith? I don't know, but I did read he was able to buy back almost all the comics he sold. Again, I'm not sure if he bought replacement issues or if he bought his actual comics back, but if you waited 2 years, I guarantee he got them for less than what he sold them for. Now, I know selling comics wasn't the only thing he did to raise money. Kevin Smith also maxed out his credit cards, dropped out of college to use his tuition for production, and he also used some insurance money from a car he'd lost in a flood. But still, I'm guessing he probably got close to $10K for his comics, which makes it a pretty darn nice collection. Made all the nicer in that he was able to turn his comics into Clerks, which later came to get its own comic line, and he eventually got his comics back, and he got to write Daredevil. And I know this may be wild speculation, but I would say without Clerks, Kevin Smith, he never gets to write Daredevil. And speaking of wild speculation, Adam, do you have a list?
That's quite speculative there. Well, if that comic connection wasn't enough for you, let me sell everybody on the debut Kevin Smith joint, because this movie's got everything. We got a convenience store, a movie store, customers, burnout, shoe polish, roof hockey, a pooping cat, 2 defiled dead bodies, nerd talk, horizontal mambo talk, a food fight, Silent Bob speaks, multiple people playing multiple roles. Speaking of which, H&P Acting Award goes to Walt Flanagan for being the Lon Chaney Jr. of the View Askew universe, and to Kevin Smith, who can make a $28,000 gamble that paved a way to a career quickly coming up on 30 years. This movie has everything.
Nice.
So my guess is, like, when would everybody say that they saw Clerks for the first time?
I would say I saw it, like, it wasn't something you saw right away unless you lived in one of the coasts. You weren't seeing this till it made it to home video.
Oh, yeah. I don't know that anybody, like, really saw this in any
And there are people that'll say they did, and those people are either liars or they saw it, like, at a screening later. But nobody, you know, like, unless you're on the coast, you probably didn't see this in the theaters. And here, I'm begging for all the hate mail. But I'm going to say I probably saw it in 95, because that's when, I know I saw it in the summer, and I know I saw it on VHS. So I think that's about when that would have happened.
Yeah, I think everybody saw it the same way. You went to Blockbuster and, oh, good, Clerks is in, and you grabbed it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what your experience was like, Sean, because maybe you were a little bit more into some artistic loops or whatever at that time. But for me, as a guy just going to Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, the way you heard about Clerks was somebody said, oh, man, I saw this crazy movie. You've got to see it. Like, I went into it blind, not knowing anything.
We had a guy in the comedy group that I was in. He was, his nickname was Alterna Boy. No one ever embraced Gen X more than this guy. He is the most Gen X person in the world. And so he was the first person I'd ever heard talk about Clerks. I don't know if he saw it in the theater. He might have, I don't know. But he's the first person I'd ever heard speak about it. And he went on and on and on about how there is a movie that has come out that speaks the way that we speak to each other. And that was a first, you know, like Tarantino had a little bit of that, but not like Kevin Smith did.
Like Tarantino had a more idolized version of it. Like his was, this is how I wish we spoke to each other. But Kevin Smith's is genuinely like, these are our conversations.
And those are also gangsters which you can't really relate to, but the guy who works at a minimum wage job, you can relate to that guy.
Right. And, you know, the story of putting that movie together is as much of part of the movie as the movie itself. I mean, everybody knows the deal before they see Clerks. They know that there's this guy from New Jersey who made a movie because he maxed out credit cards, and this is what he made. And everybody knew that story before you ever saw the movie. And when you see it, you have a certain level of expectation. And it's one of those movies that when you are, and for me anyway, when you were an angry Gen Xer and this movie comes out and the people on screen are just as angry as you are, and they're saying the same things that you are, it felt like finally somebody has found a window. Because, there were all those Gen X movies that had come out the year before, like Reality Bites and like
Singles. Those are the two big ones that people usually argue about, which is the typical Gen X movie. But watching this today, I realized, no, this is it, not Singles or Reality Bites.
Right. And on top of that, it's the first, like when you realize just how false both Singles and Reality Bites are, all you have to do is just watch 5 minutes of Clerks and be like, oh, this is from someone who's actually living it, not people living in Hollywood going, oh, you know what kids think are cool? And
are you telling me you think Cameron Crowe is out of touch with the working man?
I think Cameron Crowe thinks he's very much in touch with the working man. If I was to venture a guess, I think he'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of one of those, low down blue collar working guys. Like, no, you're not. Get out of here.
so it was just such a revelation that this movie existed, that we were able to see it, and it felt like your friends made a movie. I mean, that's literally what it felt.
That is what it feels like.
And to this day, it still feels that way. It feels like your friends made a movie. And, one of the thing that got me into the theater in the first place is the story, and, that there's people speaking the way that they speak. But now in 2020, watching this with 2022 eyes, I think the thing that has the longevity that's giving this thing the longevity is its authenticity. That even now it feels authentic. Like, it doesn't feel like a real movie, but this feels like real people. And that is basically everything for this movie. I think that it's diminishing returns for Kevin Smith after a while. I think he's made there's movies that I really like a lot. Like, I like Dogma. I think that's a good movie. And even Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I like that. I like that a bit, but it is diminishing returns because he was in it and his entire heart and soul went into making this thing. And you can see it in every frame. It's just a wonderful, wonderful, like snapshot of this is what it was like to live in New Jersey at the time.
And this is not quite the tail end. I mean, we still got another 10 years before we're really at the tail end of it. But this was at that time, too, where no matter how bad a movie was or how cheap a movie was, it still was hard to make. Like, now, you could make this movie, man. Now you get your friends, you get your iPhone, you spend $600 on a Canon DSLR that's been refurbished. You can make this movie and make it look better. And it's not the accomplishment it was in 1993.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying here? Like
Totally.
I love the idea that, and this is like that movie, American Movie, if the guy had a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, this is that same style of filmmaking that you get to investigate on American Movie. So I just love it. I kind of miss that era. Like, and I don't know if people take the wrong thing away from this movie if you watch it for the first time now and you say, this is a movie that makes me want to be a filmmaker. But it is one of those movies, like, I guess it can be like equal parts good and bad, because it's like anybody can make a movie is sort of what it says to you. That's kind of the bad part. The good part is anybody can make a movie. So why aren't you trying? Now you're not going to make Clerks, but at least get out there and do something. Cause it took me a long time to get over my fear of failure and to try and do stuff. And I haven't never made anything like Clerks, but at least I know that I wasn't too afraid to create the next Clerks because I sat home and never did anything.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that, that hit for Kevin Smith was that him and Vincent Pryor went to they would finish up their shift and everything at like 10 o'clock, drive up to New York City and watch these independent films and stuff. And one night they watched Slacker, and on his way back
Richard
he was
Linklater.
just like, wait a minute, I saw this, I've read this article in Filmmaker magazine and stuff. All of this stuff is possible. I can do that. And he said, listen, with all due respect, I watched that and I went, that counts? That's a movie? I mean, I can do that. And for what Slacker is kind of it's like an experimental kind of low budget thing where we're going from, a group to a group to a group and keep going. And that's that. But even then, he just goes, there's not even much of a story. He goes, I can write a better story than that. That much I can certainly do.
I think the thing that really caught his attention from the interview I read was that Linklater just did it in Austin. He's like, oh, you don't need a soundstage. You don't need locations. Just go where you can go and make a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, one of the things that he did is basically he got himself ready. So basically, he learned things like, oh, I've got to go to film school. So he goes to film school. Then he drops out because he realizes that, oh, they're not going to let me make my movie here. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to write. So he writes this movie. And he's made his contact with Scott Mosier, who's been his longtime producer at film school. And so they make a deal with each other.
Columbia. Like, it's not like he was just down the block at film school either. He traveled across the continent.
Right. And they made a deal with each other. Hey, I'm going to we're going to help each other with our movies. Whoever gets there first will work on the other guy's movie. And so Mosier reads Clerks and he thinks it's amazing. They go to, they get everything together. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Smith kind of figured out how to make a movie the same way that the main character in the Da Vinci Code figures out what the Da Vinci Code means, where it's like little hints and clues and like, oh, okay, so there are certain film critics that matter. So when I when I make this movie, I'm going to have to put it into this festival, and these people have to see this movie in order to get anywhere.
Yeah, and then we're getting into like distribution, not even like the movie's got to be made to start doing that.
Sure, but what I'm trying to say is that this is half of the reason why we know who Kevin Smith is in the first place, because I know a lot of people who have made movies that are, fairly good, but you'll never know who they are. And so, and the difference, of course, being that Smith just kind of hooked into the zeitgeist at the exact right moment. But anyway, so like the fact that he figured it out like through like interviews, and like he learned that Robert Rodriguez made his movie because he's like, take stock of what your assets are and make a movie around that. And so he did that. And just over and over and over again, he kind of figured out how to make this thing the way that he wanted to make it.
And that early indies 90 boom and stuff was really, a catalyst for all of that. And like I said, they would print these things, these like budget rundowns and stuff of these independent films in like Movie Maker magazine and stuff. So you could go, oh, well, here's where all of this stuff went. And that's, we can kind of use this as a template for what we want to do. And the whole idea of everything yet again in like kind of the history of film, it always kind of happens to where a group comes along and just goes like, oh, well, we don't need all the trappings and stuff that we had previously. We can do this in another way. And this was the early 90s boom of independent cinema, was another one of those waves.
Yes.
And just some smart, like knowing your limitations. I think that helps a lot too, because like with some of the stuff that they're doing with their set, it's like, we know this isn't going to look nice, so let's not even try to make it look nice. Let's write it into the story.
Yep.
Because the guy making the sign is Randall, so it's going to look cheesy. And I mean, there's the thing where he's got the chip and he's going around and around in the salsa, and you can clearly just see the white tape over the label. It's like, we're not going to try to print up a fake label. We're just going to do what we do. People know what they got here. I'm hoping that he didn't shoot any in color and go back and have to reshoot in black and white.
No,
but man, everything I understand, the lighting was just crap on this, and black and white was just a way to hide it. And, I'm a big fan. I've definitely used bed music to hide some bad audio. I'm a fan of trying to hide stuff. So I love to see that too. And, because I remember I knew nothing back when I saw this, and I thought that black and white film was just that much cheaper to buy than color film. And that's why they did it. But now I understand it's a great way to hide the fact that you don't really have a lighting guy who knows how to be a lighting guy.
Well, they're both.
Or you don't have lights. I mean, lights are expensive.
See, here's the biggest problem, Bruce, and you're on the right track. So, it became black and white essentially on A, money, and B, with lights, and that also kind of links into money as well. But when you have black and white, you don't have to worry about different color temperatures of light, because your fluorescent lights are going to look different than your tungsten lights, which are going to look different than incandescent lights. Everything has a weird thing to it. If you're in black and white, it doesn't matter. If it's light, it's there, you're good to go.
They had to shoot exclusively night for day too, so that's not, from what I understand, not an easy thing to do when you don't have access to great lights.
But talk about a smart thing, and again, where Kevin Smith was thinking ahead and realizes I have to shoot this all at night, but the first 3/4 of this movie takes place in the daytime. Well, how do I get that? Well, luckily this place has these roller things that I can keep shut and say, hey, someone threw some gum in here, so it makes sense why this isn't open and you don't see the light pouring in. It makes it like it was a really smart movie. He took that take inventory of what you got to heart very, very well with that.
And it's not like they didn't have a lighting package. They did rent a lighting package. The problem was that with the overhead fluorescence in the store, plus the tungsten that they had rented, it would never match ever. And so they realized really early, David Klein, the DP of the movie, realized, hey, if we shoot this in black and white, it doesn't matter.
And it's cheaper, so it's like it's a win-win-win all around.
Yeah.
I hope they shot the whole thing in color and had to fix it in post.
No, see, color film costs more, and that was literally, they're just like, all right, if we can save a couple of bucks, black and white it is, and it solves the lighting problem. That's aces all around. Why not?
And what's the screen format on this, Adam?
Oh, well, here's the thing. It's interesting because I started.
To me, it doesn't look like your typical cinematic.
Yeah, it's six.
Framing.
I know it's in 16 millimeters. So I off the top of my head, because I watched it streaming. Oddly enough, I have the DVD, but for whatever reason, I think I started it late in one night. And
I apologize for putting you on the spot. It's just something I don't recognize very well, and I feel like this is a little closer to square than your typical theatrical release even from '94 would have been.
Well, they definitely shot on 16, and it looks like they blew it out because it is very grainy.
I like that though. That just adds to the realistic. Like you almost feel like you found a VHS tape in a locker at school and you brought it home and this is what was on it. Like that to me was a big part of the appeal.
It's true, and the sound is good enough where it's not just so annoying how bad it is. It's not great, but it also isn't so bad that your casual viewer isn't going to be like, I can barely understand what's happening here.
That's the toughest thing.
I'm going to say, just from like my own experience, I'm the most sympathetic to the sound. I think that considering the maybe not a ton of experience, not a ton of budget, and 1993 equipment, I think they did great with this sound.
Well,
I'm not saying they did great with this sound if they had a $10 million budget, but I'm just saying, like, if I were to go out and do some skits right now, I would have a tough time getting sound this good. And so for that, because they were basically, Kevin Smith had been to film school and he had $25,000, but give me $50,000, I still might not get sound as good as this.
Well, and the tough part too here
admire that part
is with this time, we're going with 16 millimeter film, and you have to sync up this sound, which was also shot on a tape, to this film. It is and they thought they were like, we were very scared that this audio was not going to sync
Premiere
up.
just does that for you.
Not when you're on a Steam deck, it don't.
Well, Mosier had done a very bit, the smallest bit of sound work previously. He had done one other thing where he was the sound guy on it. And so Mosier was the one who was very, very nervous about the sound. And so he was the one in control of it. And so when they started editing and he was like, okay, let's see. Because he knows if the sound isn't there, it is going to be a nightmare. Yeah. And luckily enough, as he says, 99% of that sound was there. So
I know they had to scrap one scene because what they called the sound machine went out, which I guess is a recorder. I didn't even think about the fact they're recording on tape. I thought they would have been recording digitally in '93, but not if you're doing it yourself.
They still went to tape for way longer than you would expect.
Yeah. It looks like that little suitcase that you used to have when you had a cell phone. Like that's what they were recording on.
I just know my friends in radio were already doing digital in 96. And that's like mid-market size radio. But this is a guy with $27,000 in Leonardo, New Jersey. I got to remind myself he probably doesn't have the same equipment that a small town radio station would have for digital recording.
No, they had to go up to New York and rent all that stuff. And they shot for 21 days straight, nights for 21 days. That's ridiculous. And they all had regular jobs still. So you went to your regular job, then your night job was shooting this movie, and continue.
3 weeks of 2 hours sleep a night.
Oh, gosh. That's the biggest thing. And
this would have been the shortest shoot ever if I was in charge.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, especially when you've got a small movie, you're not really paying anybody anything. It is a whole bunch of first timers and stuff. They're just either not going to show. Like 21, that's a long time for an independent, no budget
It goes
movie.
to show you the cult of personality of Kevin Smith, that he was able to keep everybody there for 21 days because I don't know many people who are going to be like, oh, this guy who we've never heard of, who's never done anything before, he is going to sabotage our lives for the next 3 weeks. I'm on board.
Do you think it paid off for O'Halloran? What's his name? The guy that played Dante?
Brian O'Halloran. I'd say like he's had enough of a career that I'd say he's doing all right.
He's probably the one who had the most pain making this movie. As far as actors on screen, I mean, like I know Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, I think they got their payoff for it. Mosier got his payoff for it, but Dante's in almost every scene. And I don't think was he a professional actor at the time?
No, he was a local stage actor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's not just like it's not like Jason Mewes, who clearly was just
a drug dealer,
friends with Kevin. Yeah,
right. Yes, and he's I mean, look at it like this, man. His entire life was changed forever because he's in this movie that's, one of the most popular movies of that year. And people still recognize him today. I mean,
and he got a payback. He got like a legitimate job in Mallrats where he had a more human-like shooting schedule and got paid scale and stuff.
Yes.
Probably got his SAG card out of Mallrats.
I would imagine.
48 acting credits, so that's not too shabby.
Oh, wow. So he got it. He got his payoff then.
There you go.
I'm just sitting here thinking, because I don't think either of the principal female actors in this, the old girlfriend or the new girlfriend, I don't think either of them really got much of a boost out of this, but they also didn't have to be in that many scenes.
Sure they did. I can tell you that the one girl, the current girlfriend, I mean, she has a career that's still going. Like she's been.
I know one of the two. I can't remember which one of them it was, but one of the two was actually a guest on Chad and Vern's Stupid Movie Podcast, which is now defunct, and that's pretty low on your list of credits, I'd say. When you, that's like being on our show, Sean.
Well, I've been on Chad and Vern.
Oh, so you do know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Okay.
I will say this: the old girlfriend ended up marrying Jeff Anderson. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
They ended up getting married. Yes,
3 weeks after they shot this thing.
Yes,
like that's what. Like
she found out his fetish when she was making this movie.
And so they were married for a while. I mean, it didn't work out, and she passed away 5 years ago. Yeah,
I didn't know that. I'm really sad to hear that.
Yeah.
But it is, I love also watching the movie and seeing everybody continue to play characters left, right, and center, especially Walt Flanagan playing like, oh, he's the Eggman. He's like 18 other customers.
But you know the story behind that, I'm guessing.
People don't show up.
People didn't show up.
So you're
Walt, you're doing it again.
All right, slap this wig on him and, look this way, do this.
I think in one scene, I read that the wig he wore was one of O'Halloran's fake beards. He just turned it into a wig last minute and used it. Now, I'll tell you that the best actor in this movie, like just stepping back and trying to take emotion not out of the character that I liked, the best actor is the old man that goes into the bathroom. That guy is great.
Excuse me, Sonny.
The comics and the Dirty Magazine. No, give me that one. They got the. Oh man, I could watch that guy's scene on loop for about 7 hours.
Well, he is an offensive Jewish stereotype for sure.
Hello, sir.
He's a good actor, though, man. He knows what he's doing. Talking about his hemorrhoids, the toilet paper.
So I've got a few questions about this movie, though. And keep in mind, I adore this movie, but I do have a couple of questions. For instance, right at the top of the movie, you hear the phone ring, and Dante falls out of a closet.
Yes.
Why is Dante in the closet?
That's what you call an all-nighter.
And it's like, yeah, that was Kevin Smith really thinking he was doing something cool to open the movie. And it doesn't even work all that great, you know?
Dante isn't a party animal. He's not falling asleep in
he
in
works
a
all the time. That's his thing. Maybe he was in the closet on the phone with his old girlfriend there the whole time.
He's changing honestly, his shirt after work and then just falls out.
Considering the maturity level of Kevin Smith at the time, considering some of the jokes into this, there might have even been some joke about maybe they make the latent homosexuality joke about him a little bit later on.
Right.
So maybe Kevin Smith thought he was saying something metaphorical there with him coming out of the closet at the beginning of the movie, but I don't know. That also might just be like, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Like, the guy making his first student film, the first scene, he thinks, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this guy had a clapper? So it starts with the guy clapping his hands and the lights come on. Like, I've seen student film stuff like that.
He's so out of it. Like, this shows how his life is in chaos and disarray and everything. The room is all just asunder. And, that's probably the 22-year-old thinking.
It's not even a comfortable pose he's in. It's like he's sleeping upright.
Yeah, upright and upside down. It's weird. It's like, how are you? What are you, a bat?
That was one of those things where I think Kevin Smith fell a little too in love with his own idea, and there was enough good stuff around it that it stays and it doesn't drag it down. But that's one of those things where, like, if you weren't funding this yourself, it probably would have got cut.
Probably.
Well, how else are you going to get him in there, though?
My next question is, when Dante is leaving his house, well, his parents' house, to go to work, out front of his parents' house, there is a motorcycle next to his car. Whose motorcycle is that? Is it mom's?
It's mom's. Everybody knows that's his mom's motorcycle.
It's Dante's brother Kip.
It's inspired by Kevin Smith's actual mom, who rode a motorcycle.
Well, his mom plays the milkmaid in the movie.
Yes, that was her motorcycle.
She rode her motorcycle in, parked it, and did her bit.
And starts looking at the milk.
In her velour tracksuit, and then went on home.
Crazy, though, how much younger she looks than how I picture Kevin Smith in my mind right now. Like, that's how long ago this movie was. His mom was probably 32.
There is a very real chance that she is younger than we are when she's being interviewed.
There's a pretty good chance that, like, Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid is our age, Sean.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, this is Ralph Macchio at this old age of 48. And you're like, what? Hold on. He's ancient, Mom.
Now, can I ask a question?
Please.
So Kevin Smith definitely got distribution before he had the soundtrack, though, right? Like, he wasn't getting Jesus.
No, all
this lizard on that $27,000 budget. He wasn't getting Bad Company on that $27,000 budget.
No.
Well, it's rip-off Bad Company, but yes. It's
I thought they actually had Bad Company. They had Shooting Star.
That's the song, but it ain't that's a cover.
It isn't Bad Company, it's a cover.
It's a good cover then. I like it.
It was inexpensive and in the catalog, I would imagine. But yeah, so Miramax came in and they threw in a whole bunch of money for, a little bit of cleanups here and there, as well as throwing in a soundtrack.
And I think now you would know the lore a little bit better than me, Sean. But I feel like Miramax picked it up for distribution just from reading the script and like some word of mouth.
No. What ended up happening was that the guy who ran the Independent Film Festival in New York, like the guy who needed to see it, ended up seeing that screening. And so when like the writer of The Village Voice and blah, 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 so it goes from that guy, goes to two people, from those two people, it goes to a producer rep. That producer rep, then he's the guy that Kevin Smith really needs, because that's the one who's going to get your movie distribution. That guy, his wife ended up seeing Clerks before he did, and she was like, I've watched this movie twice. It's pretty amazing. You should watch this movie. So that guy then calls his contacts at, a couple of different places, but definitely at Miramax. And then that guy ends up writing a letter to Kevin Smith saying, hey, please send me a copy of your movie so I can see it. So he does. He sees the movie, and the two younger guys at Miramax are like, this is the movie that we need to convince Harvey that we need to distribute. Like, this is going to be a home run. And Harvey goes and sees it at Sundance, and I'm sorry, Kevin, they had a screening at the Miramax offices. And within the first 5 minutes, Harvey was like, I don't care. I'm walking out. So
you got the big anti-smoking raid, which he was a constant smoker. Massive
smoker. And so then...
But wait, do you hear about the old guy and what he does in a bathroom to a young girl?
Well, here's what happens is that at Sundance, the guy who's the big champion at Miramax for picking up this movie feels how uncomfortable Harvey is while watching it again, because, he'd forgotten he'd seen it.
Yeah.
And so he's fidgeting around, and the kid turns to Harvey and he goes, wait till you get to the number 37. Once you hear 37, if you're not involved anymore, then we can walk out of here. And it gets to that moment, and Harvey starts laughing his butt off. And from that point forward, it becomes one of Harvey's favorite movies.
Yeah, because from what I heard, it wasn't just the 37. What sold it was the in a row.
That's my favorite line.
What I heard is it was the in a row line.
That is my favorite.
Okay, this guy gets it. He's thinking of it on a different level.
That is my favorite too.
Well, the funny Kevin Smith talking about that Sundance experience where Harvey was there, like he was kind of sitting back and he's just like, who is this guy who's laughing like Max Cady in Cape Fear?
Yeah.
And it turns out that was Weinstein, who was just the one who was finally going out, just like, smoking a cigar and all this crap. It's just like, you're a real world serial killer. But
I just couldn't even imagine the tension when you're trying to see if you're going to get distribution from like the studio you want to distribute this.
Well, I'll tell you, Bruce, having been in that position before, it hurts when it doesn't happen. I can tell you that it is painful when it doesn't happen. Because you know that the next 2 years of your life are going to be the best 2 years of your life, or you're just going to continue doing what you're doing.
And that's why I recommend to see the opposite side of this scale, and with Weinstein, no less. Check out the documentary Overnight about the making of the Boondock Saints.
Yes.
Oh man,
to where that was another one of like, hey, we're Miramax, we're gonna take you on board, and everything is gonna be gravy. And then it's like, nah, we just used you to like build up a whole wild bunch of publicity and stuff, and then just dropped them by the curve. That was a crappy movie, so who cares?
Yeah, it's
I
not
like
good.
it good enough.
Well, I mean, it's an okay movie. It doesn't deserve what the director thought the movie actually was.
I have never seen anyone who has a higher opinion of themselves than Troy Duffy.
My word.
That can go along sometimes with being a creative type, though. I don't know how many terrible books that the people who wrote them think they were great.
When you really watch that guy, it is like there is just, you see something opening up, and at first you're kind of all on board. You're like, oh, this kid, he's doing something, man. He's out there. And the more it stretches on, then the more. And he talks about how later on about people editing the documentary. It's like, bro, there are long stretches of you just straight talking. To where there's like, there's no way we're getting out of this. You know that this is you. Nothing is taken out of context. This is a single shot of you on the phone talking. We heard it all. You're an idiot.
So did you guys take anything new away from watching it this time?
I did. I think, I don't know. I don't want to say I take something new every single time I watch it, but this is like a person learning to do what they love, and I think I told you this before we started recording this time, because the last time I watched it has been a few years. It was before I wrote those books. I went through that crazy year where I decided I was going to be a writer. Mm-hmm. And like watching it this time, I know that this would be the movie that absolutely influenced the way that I like to write dialogue, especially like the dialogue in that HMP book I wrote, the Nerd Spawn Genesis book. Like the conversation about the Death Star is exactly where the conversation I opened that book up talking about Hot Wheels versus Matchbox cars. I mean, it is clear to me like, oh man, I am just totally aping this. It's pretty funny. I saw an interview with Eli Roth when he's talking about, I didn't realize how much I kept remaking this classic Troma film until I went back and watched it a few years later.
How about you, Adam? Did you take anything new away?
For me, I don't know what it was. This time, it didn't. I feel like it looked a lot better than I remembered it looking. I feel like maybe I remember seeing a whole lot of really crappy VHS copies and stuff like that. But like, if you a good looking version of this, it's not horrible looking for 16 millimeters, shot by a bunch of amateurs, edited in the back of a video store. It looks as good as you're going to get from 1993 when they shot it.
I love that you can see I love it though that you could absolutely see these are some guys who didn't know what to do and they decided to make a movie. Like, I do like that of it.
Well, the biggest thing here is that, in something that I think that they even learned from kind of their failed attempt at film school, when they were there, they had a pitch meeting for.
Well, only one of them didn't finish. I mean,
yeah.
the two other guys have finished film school.
It was just Kevin Smith who said I could use this tuition money to make my movie.
Right. Yeah. So, but they pitched this idea for this documentary that they wanted to do about this post-op transsexual who was like a lounge singer or something.
Yes.
They shot for one day, then this person just disappears into the night, never to be seen again. So they rewrite their documentary as almost a mockumentary in a way, where they talk about how this project fell apart. They asked their fellow students to be in the movie. They interview them and say whatever you want about us. It could just be mean, whatever. Just tell us how you feel. And they put it together in this narrative form about how it all just fell apart.
It's pretty great.
I've never seen that.
And it's before the Tenacious D song Tribute, where the song is about how they had the greatest song in the world, but they can't remember what the song is.
Yeah, I love that song.
Me too. This documentary is about the greatest documentary ever made that actually they weren't able to finish. So like it's a pretty great idea. It's pretty smart, man.
Especially when nothing happens and you're just like, oh, we've got nothing now. This is great. Well, what do you do with it?
It's pretty clever. That is a very clever idea. So the thing that I took away this time is actually in the plot itself, which I had never noticed before. But again, I hadn't watched this movie in 10, 15 years, which is that I never realized before that Dante is a slob. Like he's a perfect Gen Xer, like slob guy. The only thing about Dante that isn't slobbish and slovenly are his Doc Marten boots.
Perfectly with the jeans tucked in and all that kind of good stuff.
And so the boots are pristine. And so, of course, he's going to have shoe polish in the back of his car because he shines his shoes all the time. And I can almost guarantee you that was done on purpose.
I never thought about that, but that's
And there is like a weird scene where they've got like a close up of conversation, and then they cut to everybody's feet for a little bit, so you get a good look at Dante's shoes. And you know the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah, yes, the one outside.
Because I didn't make that connection that you just made, Sean, until you pointed it out. But I do remember wondering, like I wondered, well, maybe they needed to do some kind of pickup and they couldn't get the real people back, so that's why they're focusing on people's feet. Or maybe Kevin Smith just wanted to show everybody's shoe game or something.
I can tell you exactly what that is, Bruce. That's called "We Got to Cover Up and Edit."
Yes.
Kevin Smith doesn't shoot a lot of coverage. It's been a lot of two shots, but very specifically for this movie. So when you've got to make an edit somewhere, you got to this is what I call the Robert Rodriguez too, because he did it in El Mariachi a whole bunch too, and I'm sure that's where Kevin Smith stole this from, because in El Mariachi, where things didn't mesh up and everything, they would just cut to the dog, and this they cut to the cat or they cut to the shoes.
It was an interesting J cut, or the inverse of a J cut actually. Well, I can't remember what that's called, but yeah, and you go down to the feet and you're looking at the feet. And I'm thinking, well, there was somebody messed something up, and all they could do was get some feet to fill in that space.
Yeah, you throw a little bit in there, but here's the thing: it's like the Prince playing guitar thing. If you do it a couple of times, then it's all on purpose.
Yeah.
And
so it made me think of the question that, so everyone's complaining about how he smells like shoe polish, but I bet he smells like shoe polish a lot.
Yeah, I like that idea. Not to mention his goatee kind of looks shoe polishy.
Well,
it's a great running gag that's like super quick, that is always through here. It's just like, what smells like shoe polish? Just throwing that in like every 25 minutes is kind of fun.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
The other thing that I want to talk about is the Scott Mosier of it all, because now I realize I never realized it till this viewing that Scott Mosier is two pretty big characters in the same movie, but because he looks so vastly different between the two, I never realized that it was the same guy until now a lot of people know who Scott Mosier is.
Now you've had almost 30 years to look at him. You know what he looks like now.
So who was the other guy that he was?
So he is first. The first thing is that he plays Snowball.
Yes, that I know. That's to this day. That's what I expect Scott Mosier to look like.
And the other guy he is the guy who ruins the hockey game.
He is the the guy that comes up and knocks it. Oh man, good for him.
He gets up on the roof,
fake beard,
and he yells down at himself.
Beard. It's not a fake beard.
He shaved real for that scene.
Yeah,
yes.
I like the idea that they shot the hockey game first, and then he had to go home and grow a beard before they could do anything else.
So when they're talking about the movie, one of the things that Kevin Smith says is we only have one special effect in the movie, and it's that Mosier is talking to himself in one scene.
That's awesome.
Because one of them's on the roof and one of them's on the ground.
I love that. Oh man, I saw a guy make a short video on YouTube where he's talking to himself, and he has a beard on one side, and then on the other side he shaved, and he goes, But I've already shaved. What are you going to do if you have to do a pickup? And he goes, it'll be fine. And it shows him with like the same costume, but no beard when he says it'll be fine. Then he goes back, yeah, it probably will be. Then back, he's like, see, I told you. And he's got his beard again. It's great.
Is that great? Some CGI.
Do we have enough time to just talk a little bit more about the storytelling here?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Because I have more bits also.
Okay, good. I don't want us to end without me saying like this thing that I thought about since I've watched this movie. And it's like that the first album that a breakthrough rock band has is always great, and it's hard to follow it up. And you had mentioned some diminishing returns with Kevin Smith, but it's like you've got several years of the time when your brain is most active, like from 18 to 25 or whatever, the time when those neurons are just firing, you don't need as much sleep. And you're just thinking of every cool conversation you'd like to repeat or you'd like to say to somebody. I'm thinking specifically with the dialogue here. And I've heard of, in writing advice, when it's like that first book, you got to take a jar and put everything that is you and all of your experiences into that jar until it's completely full. Then you got to compress it, compact it, put more in it. Because if nobody reads that first book, buddy, there's no point in saving anything for a second one. Yeah. And I do get a lot of, like, the original script for this was 168 pages I read, which,
when you see
it would have been tough to film that much movie.
When you see video of them at the rehearsal holding up this, like, they call it a phone book, and it is the size of a phone book. It is so thick. You're just like, what on earth made you think that, like, you'd be able to shoot anywhere close to all of that? It's so much.
I mean, he sold everything he owned. He came up with every penny he could scratch up. This was it. So I think he crammed every cool conversation he'd daydreamed about, a lot that he probably actually had. He really wanted to communicate what it was like to be in his social group, and he put it all into this movie. And once it became big, you can't exactly do the same thing again, but you got to try to do sort of the same thing again. And I think that's where the diminishing returns come in. And you get older and you just don't like have all those thoughts anymore.
Right. And, I mean, there is something to be said for Kevin Smith that he's still going. I think that he is finding alternative ways to stay relevant. Whereas I think somebody else in his position who isn't as crafty as he is and isn't as smart as he is probably would have stepped out and would just be doing, comic book conventions at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. I don't think that he sleeps on a waterbed filled with caviar or anything, but he could live the rest of his life without making new stuff. And he's still doing stuff on like $1 million budgets. Like he's still doing small stuff.
And if you were going to start a new podcast, that needs to be the name of it. A waterbed full of caviar. Yes.
Let me write that down.
That is a great name for a podcast.
Full of caviar, where we indulge our something or other. We'll work on it. We got to workshop that. To me, the cool thing about this is that, like, it is that there's so much of his DNA came to us kind of almost fully formed in a way, which is kind of really bizarre, because so many times, especially in like some filmmaking stuff, people got to kind of find their voice and everything. And his was so well defined from the get of go. And one of the things is he's super smart about all of this. Is the reason I think this movie is anywhere half as good as it is. They spent like a month plus rehearsing with everybody.
That's the best way to save money.
Especially when you're a first-time filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you're with first-time actors also.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And you have film, which itself is a very finite thing that you have here. You're going to run out of that, so you've got 1 or 2 takes for the most part. So even then, when they said when we were editing this thing, it was more like we were piecing it together because there was not a lot to choose from. It was just pretty much that's what we did.
It's kind of the way that Adam and I edit podcasts.
Yeah.
That's why we spend, 3-4 hours rehearsing before we start recording?
Yeah, the rehearsal part is really the most intense of it all. But once you get onto this level...
Is that why I sound like a mush mouth?
The two of us have been going over bits for at least, we've been shopping them a little. Seeing what kind of works and kind of does it. I take mine to the club every week just to kind of...
And this is the best you've come up with?
Yeah, you'd think I'd be better, but you'd be wrong.
Believe me, you don't want to see the stuff that got rejected.
Yeah, the unprepared stuff, you don't even want to. It's quite atrocious.
I tried out 7 minutes of nonstop coughing. That was not popular.
It's funny.
Thank God for the mute button because I've done that several times.
But he's kind of almost made this movie and in a lot of other ways over again. Clerks 2 is, while it is a continuation of this story, it is also kind of his story of clerks getting together. And the same thing with Zack and Miri Make a Porno. That's about making a movie, essentially. And Clerks 3, I feel, is going to be another super page from his life because this is, I think, the 3rd time he's rewritten a complete script to Clerks 3.
I believe so.
Because Jeff Anderson didn't want to be involved in it. And he's like, I'm not making it without him.
He didn't want to be involved in Clerks 2 either.
No.
I think he's hitting that too early, quite honestly. I think Clerks 2 was correct because, you're not nearly the same person. He's not nearly the same person that he was in Clerks 1. Clerks 2, I like Clerks 2 because he's saying something completely different than he said the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's something very interesting about that to me. And he is trying to go for a couple of the same bits that he did for the first time, but he's trying to say something completely different. And I found that very interesting. I think that with Clerks 3, he doesn't have something different to say this time, unless it's something that deals with him almost dying.
I think that's what it is.
Did either of you guys watch the Jay and Silent Bob reboot?
I did, and it is unwatchable.
I liked it.
Oh my God, I hate it.
I found something in there that I liked. I really felt a little bit of some of the feels I had with that last Bill and Ted movie. Like I kind of felt like that. I felt like there was this wave of movies where Gen X is saying, you know what, we can be better parents than our parents were.
Sure.
And I guess that struck a little chord with me. Plus seeing Kevin Smith sort of poke fun at himself. He's showing up as Kevin Smith at the same time that Silent Bob is in the audience at a panel. I just like that stuff.
And I liked, there are elements of it that I liked. I think I disliked more than liked on that one. But, the Affleck stuff was good. Like, it felt like it was coming from a real place.
And anyway, there's one of the younger actors. I don't want to call him out by name, but there's one of the younger actors that I just don't think is a very good actor that I've seen that person in other stuff too. And not a fan of that, but I did like the movie.
Yep. All right. Before we get to our final ratings here and everything, we do have to ask ourselves one very important question, and is how this low-budget Kevin Smith film relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Salutations, Mr. Stallone. It's Sweet Chauncey from the internet again. And this week I'm going to connect you to the movie Clerks fairly quickly because fortunately for me, writer, director, actor Kevin Smith is an outspoken person who doesn't shy away from questions asked about other people who work in show business. For instance, I know Kevin Smith, like myself, loves Hollywood urban legends. And there's 2 stories involving you that are so legendary that we've spoken about one of them way back in 2014. That rumor, of course, is the gerbil rumor. Without getting into too much detail, because this is a family show, we learned that Richard Gere blames you for starting the gerbil rumor when you worked together on The Lords of Flatbush, a rumor that has persisted to this day. And Mr. Stallone, I can't emphasize this enough. I really hope this is true. If you're the one who started this Richard Gere gerbil rumor, the world is a magical, wonderful place. And I know that you've been asked about this in the past, and I also know that you didn't deny it. You didn't confirm it either, but you definitely didn't deny it. Now, the second rumor circling you is something we've never spoken about on this show, and this is where Kevin Smith enters the picture. Now, Mr. Stallone, please keep in mind that all of this is allegedly. Everything starts with the word allegedly, because there's no way to confirm this story unless you publicly come out and confirm everything. And I don't know why you ever would do that.
And if you do, plug our show.
But I had heard for years about an incident where you, Sylvester Stallone, had left your wireless mic on after you were done shooting a scene. Maybe you forgot about it. Maybe you didn't care. But for whatever reason, you were in your trailer and you were visited by what I'll call a very exuberant fan, where you two started to, keeping in mind this is still a family show, heavily engaged in going to third base. At which point you very unenthusiastically said something I will redact since it's a family show, then something I will redact since it's a family show, and then say my name. All of which was caught by the sound mixer. I had heard this story from several people over the years, many of which have even claimed to have heard the actual audio. I don't know how they got it. I don't know why they got it. I don't even know why they were telling me the story. I had forgotten about the whole thing, stored it all in the dark recesses of my brain. And then the story was turned into an official, honest-to-God urban legend by Kevin Smith himself, back when he was speaking on his college tour a few years back. And Mr. Stallone, I have to tell you, I had heard this story many times before, but never thought it was true until I heard Kevin Smith speak on the subject, because he gave the story credence. Now, maybe we can chalk the entire thing up to Michael Jackson had to go to the hospital to remove a pound of something from his stomach story. Maybe it's crap. Maybe it's true. But my point is, which is always my point when it comes to these things, is that the world is a lot more interesting if this urban legend is true. That somewhere there's a sound guy who has the audio on a drive somewhere. And if you're just working stiff that one day gets lucky enough to work with that particular sound guy, that working stiff then becomes buddies with that particular sound guy. That guy will get to listen to that file. And Mr. Stallone, that is the world I have chosen to live in. And that's your Stallone connection this week. It's Kevin Smith. I hope to hear from you soon. And I hope that one day, fingers crossed, for some reason, you'll confirm these rumors. Your pal, Sweet Shanzi from the internet.
All we want for Christmas. All right, here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on over to the subreddit, man, reddit.com/r/Hero Movie Podcast. Bruce, where does Clerks fall on the Robin rating system for you?
I really should watch this movie more often. Like, it's got great rewatchability. We didn't even talk about Dante's Inferno, which Kevin Smith says was an influence, and that's like why there's 9 chapters, because of the 9 rings of hell in Dante's Inferno. Yeah, this is Dick Grayson. I mean, I just like it. It's got a lot in it. Like, you can feel a person who has had years of make-believe conversations in their head that they finally get to put on film. Like, I used to spend a lot of time having weird make-believe conversations in my head, so I enjoy that. And I think it's peak Kevin Smith. I'm not saying that his other movies aren't great. I'm just saying I think this is probably my favorite. It's got such great rewatchability, and it's like, it's still in that time when it really was hard to make something like this, and I always love that.
I think the word you're looking for is quintessential. Quintessential.
Leave
Kevin
Tarantino
Smith
out of this.
Sean?
There's very few movies these days where I am willing to watch an hour and a half documentary on the making of that movie. And I have done so with the movie Clerks several times. It is literally the defining movie of a generation. It is, like Bruce says, so rewatchable. There's so many things we didn't even get to, like how they got that cat to poop in the box on camera. Like there's a lot of different things that we never were even able to get to. But for me, it's a Dick Grayson all day. This movie is so influential towards an entire generation of angry young boys. So for me, it is a Dick Grayson.
Yeah, Dick Grayson for me as well. I love this movie. This is one of those ones that if you said, how many times have you watched this movie? I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either.
Between that, I've listened to, the 8 billion audio commentaries that are all on the things, all the special editions and crap like that. I've poured through all of it. This movie's been a big part of me for quite some time, and I love it. It's very good, and it's so amazing to just kind of see exactly, where this guy's career is going to be going. And you can kind of see it right here. And just that birth of an artist, you can actually, there's so many few times that you can just go, hey, look at this first thing that they did in this particular medium and, watch them flourish from there. It's kind of wild. And I'm looking forward to Clerks 3. I like Clerks 2 a whole bunch.
Me too.
And I'm ready to see what he's going to do for 3 because he's gone through a couple different ones and this is the one that Jeff Anderson has actually responded to and said, okay, I'm down now. So that says something good to me. So Clerks, if you haven't checked it out, what's wrong with you? Where have you been? But thank you again to all the people who voted for that over at patreon.com/HMP. Of course, if you would like to get the pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, and vote and all the other kind of good stuff for you, patreon.com. We really appreciate all of you guys helping support this show. And we're going to go over the top supporters and everything next week. And, of course, get you guys' review on The Batman as well, which we'll be covering next week. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I said I was going to stop doing guest spots on podcasts, but guess what?
Oh, what happened?
I did a guest spot.
What?
I did a guest spot on a podcast called The Film Find.
Oh,
what?
And we talked about a couple of scary movies, like super scary movies. One's in like Uruguay or Argentina, and the other one's in Texas. So, remote places, scary stuff. Check it out. I don't know when's that episode coming out.
It
Adam?
should be out as they're hearing this.
Wow. Oh yeah, so definitely check it out. Yeah. 2 thumbs up.
Sean, what else?
Geez, I don't know. What else are we doing? Are we doing something else?
Well,
Moon Knight's coming up.
I was about to say, get
someday.
your streaming fingers ready, everybody, because Moon Knight is coming up next month. So be on the lookout for that. Check out our Marvel 30 Questions podcast. Just type in 30 questions into your podcatcher, and you'll see all the ones that they got. Why don't you subscribe to all of them? Give them a 5-star review while you're at it. We'd really appreciate all of that. So we'll be covering that. And next week, of course, we're headed back to the theaters, everybody. I have had a very slow last 2 weeks at work, and now it is all coming to a head, and the Batman is going to be here, and I am going to be dead. And I'm so excited for it because all the early kind of snippets and stuff are saying good things for it. So we'll be checking out the Batman next week.
All I can tell, if you're still listening to this podcast right now, you should get your hopes real high. Nothing bad ever happens when you do.
Mine are at the bottom. Like I have zero. I'm just like, as long as it's a movie with Batman in it, that's all I'm expecting at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Outside
Matt Reeves
of that,
has never let me down.
Wait, listen, he's got a pretty good track record, so we'll see if all that continues on. That'll do it, everybody. Join us next week for The Batman. For Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Porter. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Eden.
I ain't working here no more. A woman done left and took all the reason I was working for. You better not try to stand in my way as I'm walking out the door. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. I've been working in this factory for now 15 years. All this time time I watched my woman drowning in a pool of tears. And I've seen a lot of good folk die, had a lot of bills to pay. I'd give the shirt right off of my back if I had the guts to say, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. My woman done left and took all the reason I was working for. You better not try to stand in my way as I'm walking out the door. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. Well, that foreman, he's a regular dog. The line boss, he's a fool. Got a brand new flat top haircut. Lord, he thinks he's cool. One of these days I'm gonna blow my top, and that sucker, he's gonna pay. Lord, I can't wait to see their faces when I get the nerve to say, take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. My woman done left and took all the reason I was working for. You better not try to stand in my way as I'm walking out the door. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. Take this job and shove it.